42-11 is going to be a record. Where do you want to start here?
Okay, let's quickly do the Somalia story because apparently that's a USAID thing, and I want to debunk that.
Sure.
Or somebody debunked it.
This is the percentage of GDP, that thing?
And that's bullshit. That's totally bullshit because apparently
I think the number, okay, can I just say that the story is that USAID made up 40% of Somalian GDP.
Yes.
I don't think that's true. I think USAID if you give it the most generous interpretation, I think you could say USAID is contributing to 40% of the basket somehow or some way. But you're right. I don't think the story as being phrased is true. It can't be.
Somalia's first it's has been considered a failed state. It is
a failed state. It's been a failed state for 50 years.
Anyways, yeah.
I'm thinking about when I was in university, we used to talk about a few different failed states, right? Like there's always the Fiji, Mauritius example. Somalia was another one we talked about. There was a few others over the course of the 4 years I spent doing poli-sci. And I think
Zimbabwe maybe came to
mind. Sure, that's probably up there. But like how many, I think that's safe to say a failed state. Maybe the length of time.
Okay, no, they're like number one in piracy, right? Like these are the guys.
Yeah.
If I think of pirates, it's either
I'm the captain now, right?
Right. The pirates of the Meridian. These guys, they're kicking ass over there. It's 40% of their foreign aid comes from USAID.
Okay.
So it's the foreign aid. That's a heck of a lot, by the way. So like the United States, just like one section of the government is providing 40%, but it's not the GDP. It's that. So people were saying it's the GDP. I don't think it's extremely hard to figure out what the GDP is over there, given how much USDT is probably being used and cash and so forth.
I'll just piggyback off Boomer's comment. We have to see if they include golden diamond encrusted machine guns in the GDP number. If they do, then that's a G7 nation probably.
And another thing I just want to bring up quickly, a lot of people are getting swatted. I'm not sure if you saw this. I don't know what's the genesis from all this, because I'm kind of confused. I'm trying to find a commonality between everybody, but apparently a lot of people are getting swatted on.
Swatting is despicable behavior. Should be like you should be punished. Like I'm talking 10, 15 years in jail, because the way that police forces seem to have a difficult time navigating some of these high intensity situations. And especially in America, where a lot of households are armed, the potential for bloodshed incorrectly happening at one of these instances is very high. And no one should be subjected to that. The people being swatted or the police is traumatic for all parties, especially after you find out that it was the wrong house or you were fooled or whatever. It should be punishable by like 15 years in jail. I think that's like that should be the minimum. You're putting so many lives at risk. You're risking the legitimacy of the department. You're risking all sorts of stuff. And I think it's completely unforgivable.
How about a Salvadorian jail? 15 years in a Salvadorian jail.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
That's a huge deterrent. Not to say that it's pump fed over there
for the rest of your life. Yeah. Have fun with that. Christ.
So Canada officially has a new prime minister. Did we have one last week?
We didn't yet. He was sworn in on Thursday, right? Thursday or Friday. So.
Oh yeah. So there we go. So This is the first show we have post Trudeau. Trudeau is no longer our prime minister. It's now Mark J. Carney.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, we could talk about him for a while. I mean, any first thoughts before we really go into this? Because
illegitimate prime minister, I would say, would be my first thought.
Why is that? Because the fact that he has not gone through a general election to be elected prime minister?
It's not just that; it's that he's globetrotting and not calling an election first. You don't have to have the election before you go to Europe, but you sure should have called it for sure. I think that's fair to say. Refuses to disclose to the media what assets are being held in his blind trust, even getting testy today with Rosie Barton. I'm going to pull this up because I think it's worth listening to. It's a very, very short clip. Rosie Barton, we've been critical of Rosie Barton, maybe me more than you, Len, over the last few years, because she really is the mascot for the slanted CBC. She was visibly upset when Ford was dominating the provincial election here in Ontario a few weeks ago. She's been visibly upset, talking about the rise of conservative ideologies in Canada over the last little while. And this is really an incredible clip that is just, it's hard to believe that the sitting prime minister has so little in terms of competency in front of a microphone and has done so little in terms of preparation for what should have been an obvious question. It really tells you all you need to know about Mr. Carney, in my opinion. And I think people should watch this clip and they should share it widely and they should be critical of the response. Let's listen in here.
I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Trump spent most of his life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules. I'm complying with the rules that Parliament has laid out and the responsibilities of the Ethics Commissioner. And I will continue to comply with those rules.
So I'll put the link to the video in the chat. I realize it's hard to hear Rosie Barton because, as you can imagine, they're trying to pull the mic from her. He answers the question off. Yeah, he answers the question in French first.
No. It's the question was first done by the Globe and Mail reporter, and you could hear her loud and clear. So that person had the mic, and then
that was a different question.
Right.
I didn't even pull up the Globe and Mail question, but the Globe and Mail question is even better. That you keep on talking about, because she doesn't ask directly about conflict of interest. The Globe reporter, what she asks is, your assets are in a blind trust now, which means you don't know what they are going forward, but you did know what they were going in. What were they? He refuses to answer. But thankfully, Len, we have guys like Sam Cooper doing work on what they are. And on Zero Hedge today, Sam Cooper was featured an article that details all the investments and ties between Brookfield Asset Management and guess which global superpower?
United States?
China.
Oh.
And it's not
they
just
moved to the
him.
U.S. by the way.
Yeah, they did move to the U.S. Although they delayed their reporting recently so that they didn't have to disclose that during the election cycle. Look, you could say whatever you want about Carney as a politician, as a central banker, as a man. Obviously stories about his child coming out today. I think that's another signpost that you have to pay attention to if you're a Canadian. Is it fair to attack a child? No, but it is 100% fair to attack the parenting style. And I think that's for sure in the cards for him during any debate, whether it's brought up on stage or just talked about on the periphery. It is 100% fair. You can comment on any of these things. And you may be right or wrong to say, like I said earlier, that I think it's illegitimate what he's done in the first few days of his prime ministerial run, whatever you want to call it, globetrotting to Europe. Two unelected bureaucrats, one named Mark Carney, one named Ursula von der Leyen, meeting with each other and talking about how great things are going to be between the two countries. Neither are between the two powers, the European Union and Canada. Neither of you were elected by your populations. Both of you appointed through, I would say, less than democratic processes. That's my opinion. You can comment on all these things, but the thing that needs to be discussed, okay, and we said this last week on the show, I'm going to say it again now. What do Mark and Diana Carney have in their portfolio? How much of it is related to climate change extremism? How much of it is in China? And how much of it do they owe in terms of the ease of with which they acquired those assets? How many favors do they owe to the Chinese government? Minister Champagne, same thing. He's got a couple mortgages with a Chinese bank as well. That story came out a few years ago. I've not seen a resolution to that story, but the total is a couple of $1 million. Like these things, they add up over time. And again, for a guy who's talking about transparency and a guy who's talking about change and a guy who's talking about a way forward, all I see is more of the same. And he needs to discuss where the assets came from, what they are. He needs to talk about the Brookfield link to China. He needs to talk about why he moved Brookfield to the United States. He needs to answer for these things.
No, it's understandably why he moved to the United States. And I think this has been disclosed. Everybody's aware.
He needs to discuss it. He needs to discuss it. He's the one who needs to talk about it because He's the guy who's got pictures with Trudeau at the diner talking economic policy. He's the guy who supported that government when they were making decisions about how to navigate the pandemic, how to navigate all these different crises we've seen over the last 5 or 10 years.
Last economic update, I could be wrong, but was he involved? And I think he was. Probably. No, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So because the way I understand it to be is that he was involved with help drafting it and help, at least create that document. And then it was also. Around, it was just the perfect opportunity, right? Like he was involved with it, and he's going to be presenting and all this, but just he was there, right? Like he was part and parcel of it all, and the guy has made a lot of money. He's worked for a number of years as.
There's no reason he shouldn't. There's no reason he shouldn't be rich. There's no reason he shouldn't be rich. Two Bank of Canada, two central bank appointments, Brookfield, Goldman, like rich is the table stakes here for him.
So Canada and Bank of England, how many years in total? Decent amount. He was making around 600,000, 700,000 pounds per year while working for the government, Bank of England governor, and that was 10 plus years ago. So but still, you got to add it all up. Does it make sense that he's worth this amount, whatever that number is, right? I look at people when they may have a lot of money. It's like, where did it come from? How did they make it? I want to have more disclosure, as you say, more transparency. And I'm kind of questioning as to like how it is to get this.
Len, your mic cut out a little bit there like a minute ago, and Boomer's in the chat asking if you were talking about the Clintons. As soon as you started talking, it just went a little fuzzy for like 5 seconds. We'll never know what was said.
You got to be fucking kidding me. You're joking, right? You're
it was only like 5 seconds. We caught the rest of it. It was about whether Carney was involved in the financial
that's
statement.
Fucking funny.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But it is like, it's interesting. And I just want to point out one more thing. Okay.
Something's going on.
We're not talking small numbers here. The total investments that Brookfield has in China, they're enormous. It's, Shanghai commercial property, $750 million. Shanghai office tower complex is $2 billion. That was only 5 years ago. Loan from the Bank of China, $276 million. That was 4 months ago. Xintiandi stake, 22% stake in something called Shuyan Land, almost $1 billion, 2013. Solar projects, joint venture, $100 million a few years back. And, there's been a tax avoidance issue too, through offshore structuring in 2021 to the tune of $6.5 billion. And so you got to ask yourself, like, again, okay, if I'm the Liberal Party of Canada, I have to pick a leader. Okay. So what are my options? I can go with Freeland, who arguably stood up to the big bad wolf, during the last throes of his government and decided she wasn't going to play ball anymore. By all accounts, we discussed on this show, received a standing ovation at the ministers' meeting that night. And, they didn't go with her. They could have gone with Karina Gold. She's pretty young, inexperienced. I don't think extremely competent. Certainly not anything new in terms of policy, but a fresh face, arguably a little bit removed from the Trudeau government. They could have gone with Bayless, businessman, doesn't seem to have a great deal of, foreign adversarial, potentially connections. Was a liberal enough that he can make the case he's a party member, but not so much that he's involved with the falling government. Or they could have gone with Carney, a guy who has pictures with Ghislaine Maxwell, has, maybe or maybe not sent his kid overseas to a controversial, gender clinic in the UK. Maybe or maybe doesn't have a couple of billion worth of conflicting assets under his name that are affiliated with Chinese companies, affiliated with the Chinese government. I don't know. Like why pick that guy? And the answer is because you just can't help yourself. That's the kind of person you want. You want that guy. You want the guy who's going to keep carrying this torch. And the torch is environmental policy that's going to destroy the economy. The torch is unfettered immigration. I mean, he said as much. We can't afford to be anything but pro-immigration. I strongly disagree with that. And I think 80% of Canadians disagree with that at this point. Like, if that's the guy you want, fine. The problem I have now, Len, is that 338, the polling guys who got, the provincial thing right, and they've gotten stuff right in the past, I hate to say it, they got this at a dead heat pretty much, with maybe even a liberal advantage. Polymarket, same thing. It's getting closer every day on Polymarket.
He has history against him. I'm talking about Carney.
Yeah.
If you look at somebody that has come in and appointed as leader and then prime minister without a general election, historically, they don't do well in the next election. Paul Martin was supposed to have a record win, and he got a minority government.
Mm-hmm.
Kim Campbell was the one before that, and while they only won 2 seats.
Very unique case there, but yeah.
The one before that, John Turner, there was the Mulroney sweep. He just absolutely destroyed. So that's the last 3. So to go back to one that has been successful, you have to go back to Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Back to 1968 was the last time you had a leader come in and get appointed as prime minister and then win the next election as like a majority.
Yeah.
Pierre Elliott Trudeau, that's 1968. That's a very long time
where
ago.
Where do you put the likelihood? We'll take Paulie's question here. Do you think there's going to be a spring election?
Yeah, there has to be.
I hear. Did you listen to Poilievre this morning? I'll preface this with this comment that Poilievre is saying, like, we are less than 100 days or 120 days from an election now. He's convinced they're going to get a spring summer. I know, but they keep saying it, and I wonder if they're saying it to put pressure on, because Carney, on Twitter in his public appearances, seems to be feeling no pressure to send Canadians to the ballot box.
Mark Carradine, whatever the heck his name is, the guy from Kingston area.
Kingston, yeah.
He was photoed this past week. He posted on Twitter that it was the most pre-writ lawn sign requests that he's received since he ran. Yeah. And so he's out there now canvassing pre-writ. This past weekend, I think on Saturday,
I had people at my door too. Yeah.
Right. So they're out there, right? So they have to be in this mood anyways, because
I'll say this too. Like the 2 conservative guys who came to my door asked if my wife and I were voting conservative. I said yes. And they asked if we put a lawn sign up. And I said, in this neighborhood, absolutely not. And they go, it's funny, if everybody who said absolutely not in this neighborhood put one up, the neighborhood would feel a lot different. And I thought that was an interesting comment. He doesn't have to say that. Maybe he's not giving me the full truth there, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot more closeted conservative voters because of this Trump stuff, right? It seems to be the topic du jour for a lot of people.
And another thing that Carney has against him, he's an Anglophone. The last time an Anglophone did well in Quebec, because it's very hard to form government, especially majority government, without winning Quebec. Harper did it in 2011. But it's very, very difficult. You have to buck the trend. It just doesn't happen, because if you go back, who are the Anglophones that ran? Harper didn't do very well in Quebec. Joe Clark didn't do very well in Quebec. Paul Martin didn't do all that well in Quebec, but also that was a sponsorship scandal. So we're talking now 40 plus years of history that you have to go back. And so being an Anglophone, it's a tough way to win, especially as a liberal leader. It's tough to win as an Anglophone in Quebec.
Yeah.
And so he's going to have to deal with that as well. And 338 was talking about, you mentioned it, and 338 is showing that the Liberals are going to actually do pretty decent in Atlantic Canada. I was saying last week they were going to do not too well. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they will get more seats than I thought. Also, they're going to get some seats between Manitoba and Alberta. I thought they were going to get shut out, but 338 is saying the opposite. They'll get a handful, but a handful is better than nothing. I was saying
federal election. I don't know. So we'll just talk about a couple here. Federal voting intentions from Angus Reid. Angus Reid skews left, and the sample, you could argue this is oversampling Liberals, but it's not oversampling by much. Liberal Party of Canada 42% to 37% for the Conservatives. That's Angus Reid, like I mentioned. We can see one here, the 338 update from March 16th, that's today or yesterday. Liberal Party of Canada, 150 seats to the Conservatives, 149.
CP Man saying he's in Montreal and he'd vote for Bloc before.
Yeah,
it's funny because Montreal typically is very red.
Even from Abacus here, Abacus is conservative or leans conservative, like oversamples conservative. 38-34, that's not as wide a margin as the Liberals had in the Liberal oversampling. You can go down the list here. This is the guy's name is Philippe Fournier. I want him to come on the show. Though I'm not sure that he will, given our, or at least my overt biases. Yeah, 338 Canada is the Twitter account. Lots of good data. And then the one we talked about, a little bit offline, you, me, and Mark, the Polymarket one is crazy that it's this close. Like, I don't know what it is right now. Let's see.
Did you talk to any normies about Carney?
They all like Carney. Everyone I know likes Carney.
And is it because he Bank of Canada connection?
No, because they think he's better to handle Trump. It's truly like retard level commentary in the normie circles. I hate to say it. I love all my normie friends, but they just don't get it. Mark Carney right now, next prime minister of Canada after the election. Poilievre 54, Carney 47. That's including, by the way, non-zeros for Freeland and Singh. So you got to figure Freeland and Singh's money is going into Carney's pot. Does that add another 2 points? Does that make it 49-51 or something? That's insane. That is insane that's possible. Yeah. And that's not a market. Like Mark pointed this out before the show. Like that's not a market that you care to manipulate, because if Mark Carney wins, your stock portfolio doesn't go up. If Poilievre wins, your stock portfolio doesn't go up. Nothing changes. We're so small. We're insignificant, right? We're a speck. But that market is telling you something there. That's people who want to make money on the result, not on tertiary or S&P futures. That's probably a pretty honest betting market. So I don't know, man. It's interesting.
Normies are looking at Poilievre and saying that he is probably not going to be the best guy to stand up against Trump. And I don't think Poilievre has done himself any favors in the past 2 months and change.
2 years.
Since
he hasn't done himself any favors in 2 years. He hasn't done anything.
Well, he was doing the right thing for quite a while. Let's be perfectly honest. He was in the lead, and you may be saying a lot about the opponent.
That's always my stance. Yeah,
it worked. And with respect to and I've said this before many moons ago about Poilievre, is what could he bring to the table that's unique? He is working for his career, I think for his whole career, in elected politics.
5 terms he's on right now.
And he's 42 or something like that. 40.
Yeah, he's like my age. He's in between you and me, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So that's a long time. That's most of his adult life. He's been so what is he going to bring to the table that's different? And I've said this before. He grew up in this environment. I mean, as an adult, this is what he knows. This is what he breathes. This is what he lives. It's not like he's going to come up with any new ideas. It's going to be rehashing the same old. Not that that's bad, but it's still going to be the same old. So it's not to say like, you want to bring somebody new in, but you want to have some experience too in a different realm. And you can bring that in and try to meld that into the world of politics and make things better overall. I think that's going to be working against him in the fact that he's been there. He's a career politician. And I can't see that as being like something that's helping them out. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
I think you're right.
He's got to work.
His campaign has just been so piss poor since Carney took over.
We invited him to this show.
We were close to getting him, and then he won the leadership.
No,
I think we're closer than you do.
No,
he won the leadership.
We invited. I met I went to Tahini's.
Mm-hmm.
I took the day off.
Yeah,
went out to fucking Tahini's when he was there, and I met with Poilievre and his chief of staff. I said, I'd love to have you on a show. Okay, blah blah blah. Got his information. Reached out to chief of staff. Boom. Said no. Without saying
he didn't say no. He said things have changed. I think.
Well, like I said, he said no without saying no.
Which by the way is like a worse response. And to the credit of Carney, like Carney comes out right away, and I don't know anything about the inner workings of that Trump-esque executive order that he signed. He just jots his name down, high fives a few people, and people clap, right? Poilievre today did almost a 1 hour long press conference, prepared remarks, English and French, took questions in front of a podium or behind a podium that had a sign on the front that said "Axe the tax." The tax is no longer the issue, man. The tax is secondary now. The whole thing is, are you better to deal with Trump? And by the way, that's not what thinking people don't care about that, in my opinion. Thinking people should care about expanding the economy, cutting taxes, making this a more business-friendly place. Carney, on the other hand, is talking about making this more cumbersome for new businesses, whether it's through taxes or through regulation or through dumb climate shit. Like, it's going to make it less inviting, and it's going to damage the Canadian economy further at a time when his former deputy, Bank of Canada chair, Tiff Macklem, now obviously the chair, has said as much, that you need to be productive, otherwise we're in big trouble. doesn't seem like the message is landing. And instead, we're overseas talking with the Europeans, a currency zone that is quite literally tying the noose around their neck and trying to kick the chair out from underneath themselves every day. And that's who we're going to partner with, I guess. I don't know. It's fake that anyone, like the fact that anyone believes this is so sad for the country, but it's where we are.
Did you see that link that was being floated around, and it was the GDP per capita over the past 10 years?
Yes.
And if you look, yeah, well, interestingly enough, because one of the countries I saw in there, I don't want to say who, I was shocked that they were on there, but Canada's sitting around 0-ish%. But the other countries that were on there, Joey, a lot of them that were double digits are in the EU.
Yeah.
So you can say what you want about them, and I know they have been doing a lot of favors, but in the numbers, GDP per capita, which is a metric we talked about as being like a metric of how well the country is doing per individual, some of those European countries are doing decent, still below United States. Yeah. United States is still the gold standard, but still, it's, I'm trying to say it's decent. So I'm not trying to say anything. I don't think it's as bad as you make it out to be, because just looking at that, I'm looking at okay. All right.
Yeah, I think it's pretty bad, to be honest with you. GDP per capita economic growth for 10 years. So over 10 years, if you get 4% GDP per capita growth, like that's fucking terrible. If you get
the United States was just 20%, and
20%,
that's also
that includes the COVID years. Like that's pretty good, And then, we should note that doesn't include the destruction that took place in the currency market for us. Like we're getting killed in currency, we're getting killed in trade, we're getting killed in productivity. And that also doesn't take into account that probably what you're going to see in the next few years is that number go down even more as productive people leave. If you keep tagging the country and the productive population with more nonsense, eventually they will leave.
Well,
right?
Just ask, in the audience here listening and watching, or actually people watching, I'd love to know how many people are actively trying to make arrangements to leave.
Yeah.
Be it 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years.
Tons.
But like, are you going through the motions?
Since 2014, I'll pull a stat here from a guy named Invested Capital. Since 2014, in business investment in Canada collapsed by 20%. 20%. That's a lot. And then I just want to add one more thing on the carbon tax. Like,
Premier we'll talk about that. Let's not gloss over it.
Okay.
No, but sure. Go ahead. We have to talk about this.
The carbon tax thing is nuts. Like he acts the tax, and then the Liberal Party is dancing, what they think is dancing on the grave of the Conservative Party. Can you imagine if your whole campaign was axe the tax and then the Liberals just axed it for you?
It's a brilliant move.
It is, if you're retarded. And if you're not retarded, you look at it and say, if you're not retarded, you look at it and say, I can't believe these people think that we forget that they did this. The thing that's going to hurt the most is on April 1st, the price of gas is going to drop by like 17 cents or 18 cents. So you will have paid.
Brilliant.
You will have paid. Like this is like, again, the R slurred versus the thinking man. Okay. The thinking man looks at this and goes, I've been paying 17 more cents a liter for gas because these guys told me if I didn't pay that, the world would burn. There was a guy literally like crashing out, as the kids say, in Parliament, 6 months ago, talking about if you go on a summer vacation, the world's going to set on fire. Like, idiot. And now this guy is canceling it. Jason Kenney made a great point. Did you know that in 2020 or 2019, he sued the federal government to try and get rid of the carbon tax, and the Supreme Court sided with the feds, 6 out of 9 judges, that the carbon tax was necessary to, quote, prevent irreparable harm and, quote, critical to our response to an existential threat to human life in Canada and around the world. And
this is a narrative.
Now they cancel it.
Yes.
It's bonkers. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that the same people who don't have time to sit around the table and talk about why their money isn't working and why inflation is killing them and why their house is worth so much, but they still have no money in the bank, those same people are not going to have the time to talk about how obviously scammy this behavior is from the Liberal Party and from Carney. And instead, they're going to go, well, it sure is nice that I don't have to pay 17 more cents. Like, is it putting money in your pocket, or is it not putting money in your pocket? Is it helping Canadians, or is it not helping Canadians? Is the world going to burn, or is it not going to burn?
It depends what you read and who you listen to and when.
For fuck's sake.
So last year, I could go back. July of last year, this is from Canada.ca website, the finance department. I got some information here. They said in provinces where federal fuel charges apply, a family of 4 will receive up to $1,800 under the base Canada carbon rebate.
Sorry, this is from the Ministry of Finance, yeah?
Department of Finance on
Okay.
Canada.ca.
Okay.
As of July of last year,
sorry.
a family of 4 will get $1,800. So now that $1,800, apparently there's one more check coming around, and after a check, they're no longer going to get that. So either
Nice.
we're not going to get this money because we weren't paying into it, or like somehow like we're either going to get more for not paying, or we're just, I don't know what the fuck. This is
It's going to
interesting.
be hidden, right? Like this is the other. Sorry, keep going.
No more. October. I'm even going more recent. October of 2024. The federal government announced it will return $2.5 billion in carbon tax rebates to small businesses by December 2024. So small businesses were, if we believe this to be revenue neutral in a way that, or at least positively impacting people, small businesses are going to get hit to the tune of $2.5 billion. That's what they told us October of last year. Source Canada.com. This is the environment climate change website. Check that out.
Yeah.
Then we have now, like you mentioned, the consumer tax rebate or price is going to be gone. And they asked directly why, Mr. Carney, why is this being canceled? He said, the government is, quote, focused on action, end quote. Focused on act. What action is going to be now enacted that hasn't been, if climate is a huge thing and we have to pay for using carbon, what to this date, like, I'm not trying to defend it. I'm trying to say that's what's being done. Either it was wrong, we have to cancel it, or it's right, we have to continue it. But by doing the action of cutting it, it's saying it's wrong. Furthermore, you could even go, Canada apparently has reduced its carbon emissions in 17 years from 2005 to 2022. 54 megatons were reduced from by Canada in that 17-year period of time. And some of it is being attributed to the carbon tax. Now, if the carbon tax is gone, obviously then there's going to be more carbon. It's so carbon bad. I don't know. You tell me. This and that information I got, it was modified as of 2025 January, just this year, 2 months ago. Not ancient history. This is so. There's a price that they still want to put for big industries to, at least if they're going to do anything with carbon. So I don't know. This whole thing politically, I think it's a brilliant move to chop Pierre Poilievre at the knees, because this whole axe to tax thing, he could still say it, but the reality is, at least for the consumers, it's going to be gone. We'll still pay in the end somehow if they're going to be taxing big industries. Like nobody's going to be eating this.
So laughable that anyone thinks you're not going to pay for this in the long term. It's so laughable. I just like, I'll say the same thing I said on Tom's show, that I'm so sick of being told that I have to like eat my shorts basically to continue to be Canadian. You know, I have to be tougher and take a wartime footing. And I just think like, you know, when I hear things like you have to pay the carbon tax or you have to buy Canadian, I might have said this last week, I'm going to say it again anyway. When you hear stuff like this, and I tweeted it as well, like when you tell me I have to buy Canadian, what are you really saying? When you tell me I have to support Canada, what are you really saying? That I have to buy from companies who 5 years ago wouldn't let me or my friends and family in unless we got these vaccines, which didn't work the way they were advertised. So, you know, we were lied to about it. That's a fact. You can disagree with it if you want. It makes you stupid to think that. You know, is that the company I got to buy from? Is it the grocer who, you know, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, you know, I'm being told now I have to buy from these Canadian stores. You told me a year ago they were price gouging me, that they were fucking me and lying about it and causing inflation, that it was them and not you. Is that the grocer I'm supposed to buy from? Am I supposed to go there and buy products that are manufactured in Canada, not by old stock Canadians, but by cheap Indian labor that came here on TFW nonsense over the last 2 years that won't hire kids from my area or your area or anyone's area? That's the company I got to buy from. That's the quote unquote Canadian product I got to buy. And it's all to support a country whose identity I was told is colonial, racist, xenophobic, not worth protecting. We're not a state. We're post-national. We don't have an identity. If you think that, you're not the kind of Canadian we want. In fact, new Canadians are more Canadian than me because they chose to be here and I just got here by the luck of the draw. Is that the country I'm supposed to be protecting? Or maybe it's the country that now can't afford to give me proper health care, makes me wait in line for weeks at a time, you know, has, what does Mike Campbell say, 20,000, 30,000 people dying on waiting lists every year, even after paying into the healthcare system their whole life. That's the country you want me to support and defend? Get fucked. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And they have to start figuring out that this nationalistic stripe is flimsy. And by they, I'm talking about like average Canadians. Boomers especially need to get their head out of their ass and start realizing that they're handing us down a country that's irreparable if they continue voting for this nonsense and believing the shit they see on TV. And that's unforgivable. The country, this is the last generation that's going to be able to fix, even in the slightest, any of these problems. And if we don't do it now with this election, if we give Carney and these guys 4 years or more, you can kiss this country goodbye. Goodbye. It ain't never coming back. You're going to be a Century Initiative freak show so the Eurasia Group and Brookfield and everyone else can come here, rape, pillage, steal, and rent to you, as opposed to you owning anything and being able to build a life. Good luck if they win this national election. Good fucking luck.
What is the first thing Mark Carney did? I mean, one of the first major thing he did when he became prime minister, aside from the carbon tax thing.
I don't know.
He hopped in a plane and went to Europe.
Yeah.
Right. Like
yeah.
that's
and he went to a St. Patrick's Day parade. Very important stuff. Very important stuff.
Well, I'm going to not even acknowledge the St. Patrick's Day thing. The Europe thing I want to acknowledge. If climate change is a threat to humanity, if it truly is, you have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. You have to walk. Like if somebody out there says climate change is horrendous and they change their life in a way which reduces the amount of carbon they emit, and they change their life and they are doing things differently, I respect that individual. I may not totally agree with what they're saying, but at least they are doing something for what they believe in. Now, when somebody hops in a plane, fuck, how much carbon does this guy put into the atmosphere? It's not like there's a bunch of people going there on vacation. It's him, few of his staff members, security and shit like that. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. Like that's one of the first things you've done. Like if carbon really was a fucking problem, you wouldn't do this thing.
It's just not true. It's just not true.
You would lead by example. You would say, you know what? Enough is enough. I'll do this by fucking Zoom. I know that's not industry standard, but we're going to make this industry standard now. We're going to make a stand now. We're not going to do this fucking bullshit, and we're going to lead by example until somebody does that.
Amen.
I can't, like, why am I the culprit? All I do is I wake up, hop in car, go to work, come back home. Why am I the fuck? This is the environment which you set up. Public transit isn't viable for me. So I have to drive my car. I don't take vacations. I haven't been on a fucking plane in 10 years. Why am I the fucking problem?
Yep.
I'm not. I'm fucking part of the solution. I'm paying into this to make it easier for people, for everybody to fucking live. I'm not fucking doing this bullshit, but somebody that comes in, not even fucking voted by the majority of people. And the first thing you hop on a plane, it's fucking bullshit.
Yep.
You got to call fucking this out. And I'm going to do it right now. Fucking stop it, man. You got to fucking do better.
I honestly believe that anyone with a platform and a voice should be doing everything they can to make sure this party does not win a national election. Everyone should be doing this. I rarely ever say that. I rarely ever get this political and this angry, but the stakes, like, they are so high, man. They are so high. You have to stop these policies from destroying the country further. You have no choice but to be a voice in your community, in your friend group, with your family.
No. I'm
totally
thinking you got to do a step further, Joey.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one I'm living this one. You got to prep. You got to
prepare too. You have to prepare like they're gonna win. I think so too. Yeah.
And I'm fine with it. And I kind of in a way I want them to win, but I'm like prep for the great exodus. Whenever that's supposed to be for you, just prep for that. That's what you got to. That's the salvation for you. You have your Bitcoin and you have whatever else you have, and then just fucking do it. Like whatever happens behind you, let it burn, man. It's not your fucking problem.
Agreed.
I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna fucking enjoy it. You guys should do the same. Take action, figure it out, and do it.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Well, we'll talk about these aluminum tariffs and steel tariffs, 50%.
For what? What are we going to talk about? Like you know,
the funny thing is Canada then
we just get dunked on. All we do is get dunked on by American politicians, American media, American, like everything. They just dunk and dunk and dunk and dunk.
Well, Canada's doing retaliatory tariffs. Like that, almost $30 billion in retaliatory tariffs.
30 billion. Ooh, is that a lot?
Well, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think it was LeBlanc, he was saying on one of the national TV spots, he was saying that United States, they need our aluminum. And forgive me if I'm wrong, I'm just quoting what he's saying, because they don't have the capacity over there to meet the demand. So they have to import aluminum, and Canada is who they import it from primarily. So what this is going to do in the end, you're still going to have to get aluminum from somewhere. And if they're going to get it from Canada still, it's just going to be more costly for them. So I keep
on hearing that every Canadian politician keeps on saying the U.S. can't exist without X commodity from Canada. Like, that's a lie. It's a lie. It may be difficult for them, but it is a lie. And just to point one other thing out about the point you made earlier, this climate change stuff, and Mark hopping on planes fresh off the Liberal leadership stage. Len, if we can't sell our aluminum to the States and we have to sell it to Europe, how are we going to get it there? Any idea? Is it going to be in a battery-operated electric vehicle? Any idea how we're going to get it there?
It's time to invent these Star Trek transporters.
Just the most heavily polluting vehicles the planet knows. Basically, anything
bunker fuel
is those ships, those cargo ships. Like, you're going to pollute even more going that way. It's unbelievable. Like, at every turn, there's contradictory information. And the fact of the matter is that we cannot compete with the United States in the tariffs. And by the way, for a guy who's tough talking America, has Trump even mentioned Carney's name in the last 4 days?
No, that's a great point. I haven't mentioned him.
He's a fly. He's a fly.
There's going to be acknowledgement.
It's going to be, and I can't wait to see, 4'5" Carney against 6'4" Trump, probably double his weight, and just the handshake in the Oval Office. Do you think Zelensky looks small in that chair? All these things, okay, were avoidable. All of them. If we had just embraced the natural resources that this country has to offer and used them to become economically viable with trading partners near and far. Instead, we refused. Pierre pointing out today at his press conference that instead of selling oil and gas or liquefied natural gas to the States now has a deal with Qatar. Did they have to get a deal with Qatar? I don't know. Probably not. We just refused to do the right things for so long. And now you have a guy who's even more determined to do the wrong things and seems to have popular opinion behind him. There's so little hope for this country if they win. I cannot stress that enough.
Even
There's
lose,
so little hope.
Joey.
Even if they lose, you're right. No, you're right. But if they win, the decline will be so fast, so fast. You will feel it in your pocketbook, 6 months after they win that election. You see it. Companies will no longer come here. You'll start to hear more whispers of, forcing retirement and pension funds to invest in Canada. Carney, by the way, has already said that he thinks pension funds should have to be net zero. And as the Canadian government is not going to fuck around with the Canadian pension. They're going to tell these guys, CPPIB, you have to be 50% or 60% or 80% or 100% in Canadian carbon neutral companies. That's no oil and gas. All these things, the runoff effects of these poor decisions is it's hard to fathom the enormity of the world around these things. It's your pension, your healthcare, schooling, roads. It's everything relies on these things, on these guys getting this right. And they're just not going to get it right. Now, Pierre, I've said this before. I don't think he's a good politician. I've been critical of him for years now. He's TikTok. He's millennial. His party knows he's got limitations in front of a microphone, knows he's got limitations on a debate stage. That's why they had him add 20 pounds of muscle. That's why they got him on that workout regimen, because at least he can look imposing if he can't sound it, and he can't sound it. So, at least if he wins, you probably won't see Alberta Oil and Gas immediately close up shop. That's a plus. But to your point, Len, long term, like what does Lynn Alden say, right? Nothing stops this train. I think that train is starting to pick up speed here. Even normies are realizing it.
Maybe his wife could get involved. All right. By the way, can we invest in Eurasia? Is that a publicly traded company?
It's not. It's like a consulting.
That's too bad. I'd love to get into that because they seem to. It's Canada's also. It's kind of a different topic, but kind of the same thing. Canada's planning to issue the U.S. global bonds in the not too distant future. And a lot of people on Twitter were saying, "What the fuck is this all about?" But this is not the first time they've done this. No. Like in the past 5 years,
but it's currency defense. It's currency defense. Like, that's not good to be defending your currency before. I mean, maybe it's before there's a crisis. Maybe there's a crisis that I don't know about or we can't see. But
they've been doing this for a few times in the past few years. And before that, maybe I don't know how many. I just saw. I just randomly pulled up 2 dates and found it in 2024. They did it last year, and they did it in 2019 too. So whatever. I mean, I don't think this is a huge thing. More than anything, like it's just par for the course, right?
It's another signpost. It's a signpost. Yeah.
Well, one more signpost we could talk about, and it won't be people driving EVs, or at least Teslas, in BC, because BC is now going to war with Elon, so and laughable. They plan to remove the EV subsidies for the charging stations and whatnot on Tesla products. So David Eby, did I pronounce his name right? Or
I think it's Eby.
Okay, David Eby, I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. He said he's going to be borrowing Tesla products from the province's electric rebate policy, and he's going to be doing this to preference Canadian goods. And so Tesla products, they're not going to be subjected to the British Columbia's Clean BC or BC Hydro rebates, which could grant up to 50% of the cost for people that install a charging station at home. This is according to the BC Hydro website. So they're going to be forcing people, or at least incentivizing people, to seek for alternatives, in this case, Canadian good alternatives. Whatever.
Yeah, this is, what am I even going to say? I don't know. Like, I'm tapped out. Well, how much more can I say? I'm at the point now where, yeah, you got me thinking, like, it doesn't matter what I fucking say anymore. It doesn't matter how big the show gets, how many people we talk to. I just got to plan my escape. Like, at this point, what else is left?
Yeah. I've been saying this for a while. Everybody should be doing this, because when the time comes, you want to make sure that you have everything in order and you have to do as minimal work.
And by the way, any word from any of these clowns or Carney, clowns and Carney, unbelievable. Any word from any of these clowns on the Chinese 100% tariff on like rapeseed oil and stuff like that came down last week? Has anyone mentioned that? Does the CBC talk about that at all? Is there a new tax or tough talk coming for President Xi, or are we just like so cucked that we can't even bring it up? We can't even talk about it in the media. Like, where are we on that?
What about the dairy industry? There has been tariffs.
I talked about that on Tom's show last week. You'll hear me talk about that tomorrow when it comes out. 300% on after a certain threshold. Tom had a great story. Went to the States, tried to buy more than $20 worth of butter, ended up costing him $400. Had to go back and return the butter over the border. Unbelievable! It's unbelievable.
Why is this? Why is that acceptable?
Because we are full of shit. Uncompetitive losers in this country. That's why. What other explanation is there? We're addicted to fucking losing. It's everywhere. It's your cell phone bill, the price of eggs, the price of energy, the politicians. It's everywhere. We drive every company worth a damn gets driven out. Everyone.
You should take a look. Because I watch international TV, and I don't want to say which one, but the cell phone plans and home internet.
Everyone has seen this. Everyone. If you want to get mad, look at the fucking telco plans in the States compared to here or Europe. Well, my wife and I went to Europe a few years ago. It cost me like $8. Okay, to go there and get a SIM card with unlimited calls, texts, and data for 2 fucking weeks. $8 or €8, whatever. So $15, let's say.
No, I was like 12 or 11.
Whatever. Like, it's so unbelievable that here, if you go to like the Canadian telco Reddits, people are like jerking each other off over getting 10 gigs for $60 a month. $60 fucking for 10 gigs?
It's in some parts of Europe, it's so fucking cheap. So like you look at, that's just an example of how much you're paying you're paying for gasoline over there. If you pay for petrol in Europe, it's expensive. But
your house is fucking dark and cold. But at least you can call your friends and complain about it. And until the government tells you it's hate speech and arrests you in the UK.
A lot of it is,
you know,
the lifestyle is, you know, you don't, a lot less driving and a lot more, you know, friends
starving.
and family that are
A
nearby.
lot less driving.
Oh,
a lot
no,
more
that's,
starving.
no, that's not.
What'd you
the
have for
case.
lunch today? Cigarette and a glass of wine.
What am I?
Same thing I had for dinner.
Joey, I think that's a good time to end it. 1:32. See, I told you we'd do a
Yeah.
long second
Yeah,
part of
we
it.
had lots to talk
To
about.
me, for whatever reason, this is a slow week in Bitcoin. When that guy Joshi Bitcoin was like the big story, that's an indication that it's been a slow. We've had a lot of weeks of just so much going on. And we finally had a little bit of a breather, but only on the Bitcoin side. On the other side,
I'm not going to read that comment, but for people on video,
I'd love to know what they speak. I would love to know.
Yeah, I got some ideas. Anyway, listen, God bless. Come back on Wednesday for Len's interview with Mike DeGroot. You're going to like that one. Lots going on in the P2P space here in Canada from a good Canadian. And until next time, friends, take care of yourselves.
Don't be a cock.